The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept it, and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is the third day of this 7-day sesshin here at Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico in June 2019. And the days are flying by, which is a good sign, actually. It means people are engaged. And that's important. We have such a short period of time, just 1 week here, in how many years of life, to be able to give ourselves without distraction, well, without external distraction anyway, to the practice, to deepening, to find that true mind that we are. It's not really to find it, it's to uncover it, to see through all the ideas, conditioning, assumptions, through the self-image that prevents us from experiencing it and living it fully. Because when we can do that, our life is as it should be. We come into this life yearning for completion, and we seek it in all manner of different forms. This is one aspect of addiction, actually. It's not all about greed, addiction. It's also has a major component of searching for that profound peace, awareness, ease, and joy, quiet joy, that comes when we can experience our true self as it really is, without inhibiting it through our ideas about things, through our thoughts, and so on and so forth. And Huang Po, who was living in the 9th century Tang dynasty in China, was a true master who had experienced deeply his true nature and spoke to his students about it, encouraging them to realize it themselves. And fortunately for us, there was a particular student, Pei Xu, who was a government official, high enough up that he could command the whereabouts of local Buddhist clergy. And this is something that we are not necessarily so aware of with regard to ancient China, but the government had a tight fist on Buddhism and Buddhist clergy. You had to get government approval to have a monk ordained. It wasn't simply up to the master and the student. It was up to the government whether that would happen. And various different masters fell into favor or disfavor with the government, and accordingly their students either suffered from it or benefited from it. And in this case, Pei Xu was in the good graces of the government that he was serving, and so he was able to have Huang Po serve at particular temples that were nearby where he himself was assigned. And again, it was up to the government to determine where a given master would be housed. And there are a number of stories of deeply realized masters in ancient China who bucked the system. They felt a deep responsibility to their students. And when the emperor, wanting to glorify his court, requested their presence at his court, they would refuse from time to time, and some of them suffered execution as a result of that. We don't realize in the West how fortunate we are in terms of our Zen practice. We are able to practice on with our own cognizance. We are able to find a teacher on our own. we are able to come to sesshin without having to get somebody else's permission, certainly not the permission of the government. Of course, we have to sort out our daily life to make space for it, and perhaps get permission from our boss at the company that we work for, or our job that we work for, to have the time off. But in general, we have a great deal of freedom to do our practice. So I'd like to continue today with sharing the teachings of Huang Po, as translated, newly translated by Robert Buswell, and with a commentary by a Korean master, Subo Sonim. Realize the one mind and you will be a Buddha. That is the title of this chapter here. And yesterday we shared this first part of it. Pei Shu, by the way, in addition to making sure that Huang Po was able to be in the vicinity where he himself was serving the government, also spent a great deal of time in his presence and asking him questions as he himself searched for his own Buddha mind. That Buddha mind, that true self, is not somewhere else. And in a way, the English language is a little bit challenging. And it says, become a Buddha. Well, the seeds for that is already there. And to be awakened simply means to be awakened to the truth of who we are. It's not about suddenly you find something that is your true self. You awaken to it because it's always there. It never can be anywhere else. It's only that it's covered up by all the ways we distract ourselves, by our conditioning, by that pernicious self-image. The more we are able to let go of that self-image, the closer we are to experiencing that true self and the freedom that it offers. Because when we're caught in this self-image, we are motivated is not quite the word, but it demands that we support it. It demands that we defend it. If somebody insults us, we get angry. We want to fight back. We want to get back at them, and so on and so forth. And it creates a great deal of pain and suffering in our life. Yet that's not who we are. So if we aren't that self-image, that set of assumptions of who we are, then the big question, which we are spending a great deal of time wordlessly searching for the answers to, is why we practice. So yesterday, we shared this first part. The Master said to me, Pei Shu, all the Buddhas and sentient beings are only the one mind. There is no other Dharma. Since time immemorial, this mind has never been produced or extinguished. It's not born, it doesn't die. It can't die because it wasn't born. That's a difficult thing to wrap our mind around. But if we use that perplexity to search beyond the words, feeling our way in the dark, deep, 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 deep within and deeper yet within, and not getting caught up on the various different things that may appear, memories, ideas about ourselves, difficult emotions. All these kinds of things can come up in this search. And in a certain way we can conceive of them as attempts by this self-image to take us away from that search. But it's also, in another sense, it's residues of conditioning, of experiences and so on and so forth that are locked in our body because they've never been processed through and let go of. And that is something that will come up, generally speaking, for everybody doing practice. And we find ourselves greatly dismayed by that, usually, until we get a handle on what it really means, which is it's an opportunity to open to that, whatever it is, sticky place, and to let it go by allowing ourselves to experience the energy of it, to open our arms widely, practice the radical acceptance of things as they appear to be, but still letting that perplexity take us beyond. Not shutting it down. A difficult feeling comes up. It's important not to shut it down. It's also important not to indulge in it by wallowing in it, but to be curious. It's an opportunity to search again. Who is feeling this way? My true self. Where is it in this moment? Since time immemorial, this mind has never been produced or extinguished. It is neither green nor yellow. It has neither form nor characteristics. It does not belong to the categories of either existence or non-existence. It cannot be measured in terms of new or old, long or short, large or small. It transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. What is right in front of you? That is it. But if you start to think, you'll be far off the mark. And there's some commentary here by Subul Sunim. If you start to think, then you will be far off the mark. In other words, if you arouse your thoughts to try to figure out what this mind really is, images begin appearing in your mind, and you end up losing your original mind. I hear the language is somewhat challenging. I wouldn't say lose your original mind, because you can't lose your original mind. Lose track of, lose contact with, lose experience of, but not lose. The true pleasure you can enjoy by residing in the original place cannot be compared to the lesser worldly pleasures, which inevitably entail suffering, sooner or later. We chase after pleasure, and sooner or later, whatever it is we thought we wanted, either we don't get it, and so that hurts, that's frustrating, that's annoying, or we get it and it's not as glorious as we thought it would be, or we get bored with it after a while. One of the Theravadan teachers once told a group he was teaching, imagine there's this wonderful, extremely comfortable armchair, and you sink right down into it, and it feels so good just to be there. Well, how's it going to feel if you're stuck in that chair 4 hours later, having sat in it for 4 hours? Where is that initial pleasure now? Are you still feeling like it's a wonderful experience? Or are you starting to get frustrated and bored because you can't get out of the chair? This is how it is with chasing pleasure. And in another way, in a very deep way, when we are searching for pleasure, when we are chasing pleasure, we're really trying to experience, without realizing it, that true mind of such freedom as you cannot experience in any other way. when we search for something, when we want something, and we search for it, and we finally get that, whatever it is that we wanted, then there is at least momentary happiness, joy, release, relief, ease. But why is that? It's because in that moment, we are allowing ourselves to be present. We're not searching. We're not trying to get somewhere else. We're not trying to get something else. But then, of course, sooner or later, there's something else we want, because we haven't reached a depth. We're searching for things outside of ourselves. As we work on our practice, again, we're facing all kinds of challenges. But if we persist, and don't shut anything down, but don't indulge anything either, but continue to reach beyond words for what we don't know. If it has no characteristics, how can we find it? We think. And yet, at the right moment, it will make itself known to you. And if it is a deep awakening experience, it's quite transformative. If it's a shallow experience, it's only temporarily transformative, and we always, no matter what level of awakening it is, it's important to continue to reach beyond, not to stop at that view, because there's a deeper place, a more free place that we can open to. The one mind is like empty space. It has no boundaries and cannot be measured. We're accustomed to searching for something concrete, a recipe, a solution to a problem, an identity for somebody we're trying to connect with, the weather. All of these things have a concrete answer if we know where to look, at least. But to search for our true mind, there is nothing concrete. It's really about trust, faith, allowing ourselves to sink deep, searching for something that we have no description for. How do we know we're even on the right track? And at a certain point in our practice development, that's of concern. We want to find somebody to tell us you're on the right track, because for however long it takes, it could be years and years and years and years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, before we open to some depth of realization of that true mind. I knew somebody who was practicing at the Rochester Zen Center very, very steadily. He actually lived in Buffalo, which was an hour away, and he had a job. He was an art teacher. But every single Sunday morning, he would be there in the Zendo, sitting Zazen, listening to the Teisho that came later. He would come to Sesshin whenever he could. And when he had been practicing for 13 years, he went into Doksan, he told me once, and said to Roshi, I've been practicing for 13 years, and I still don't know what Mu is. And he said that Roshi said to him, 13 years? 30 years? And all of a sudden, for John, it didn't matter anymore. It took him 20 years. But when he did break through, it was deep. When I was getting frustrated because everybody around me seemed to be breaking through, being passed on their breakthrough koan, and I wasn't, I went to one of my friends who, along with his wife, had also been passed on Mu and was working on subsequent koans. And I said, Frank, I haven't had an insight yet. And he said, don't worry, it's all cumulative. Don't worry, it's all cumulative. What he meant by that is every time we sit down and focus our mind and give ourselves as fully as possible, and it's hard to do that without trying to judge it, but see what you can do about that. Judgment isn't helpful. Each time you do that, each time you extend that out breath, filled with the perplexity of whatever your breakthrough koan is, whether it's Mu, the sound of one hand, whether it's the original face before your parents were born, whether it's who am I, doesn't matter. Allow yourself to experience that perplexity. Extend that out breath, fully present with that experience, that physical experience. And you are very significantly practicing letting go. And when that letting go gets sufficient, that insight will come. This is why patience, or it's sometimes called patient endurance, is so important. Persistence is so important. Faith that you can get there anyway is so important. Because it will happen if you persist. Of course, this means not just putting your body on the cushion and daydreaming. It means really giving yourself to the practice. And when you do, it will make an enormous difference in your life. And then, of course, it's important to recognize that there's more work to be done after that. That opening allows us to see where we're caught in greed, anger, and delusion. And comes with that a great responsibility to let go all those places where we're caught, to see through them, to release them, to live the freedom that is inherent in that insight. Only this one mind is the Buddha. There is utterly no difference between the Buddha and sentient beings. There's nothing outside us. There's nothing we lack. Nirvana is openly shown to our eyes. This earth where we stand is the pure lotus land, and this very body, the body of Buddha. These are the words of Hakuin. And he should know. He had 19 major Kensho experiences and countless minor ones. Sentient beings are attached to appearances and seek outside for the Buddha, but in seeking the Buddha, they lose the Buddha. Again, I question this language. They don't lose the Buddha because the Buddha can't be lost. They lose the potential for opening at that moment. Maybe that's a better way to put it. They make a Buddha look for a Buddha and use the mind to grasp the mind. Even though they exhaust themselves until the end of the eon, they will never be able to get it. And Subal Sunim's commentary on this, most people are attached to outward appearances and thereby distinguish between various phenomena. However, our eyes cannot see the real characteristic of things. This very mind that looks for the Buddha is the Buddha. Wouldn't it be futile to make a Buddha seek a Buddha? However, your eyes cannot see the real characteristics of things because we're blinded by that set of assumptions of who we are, and also the experiences that go behind it, which help to contribute to that self-image, the conditioning, and the desires. The desire to get away from pain and suffering, and by searching for some substitute outside ourselves, when the only real source of ease from suffering can be found within. And an excellent example of that is that of Jacques Lucéron, incarcerated in that prison camp in the Second World War in Germany. Ritually starved, not enough clothing. It's winter in northern Germany. Snowstorms, blizzards, and the ever-present threat of death from sadistic guards, from the authorities who march you out and shoot you, or gas you in the so-called showers, or even from your fellow prisoners who go berserk and murder people in their own desperate attempt to become free. And yet, after 5 months of living in that horror, he became so ill that they carried him away to die. And instead of trying to flee or trying to substitute something else in his own mind, he tuned in and felt exactly what was going on in his body. And this is really a lesson for us, because nowhere outside is there going to be an answer. But when things are challenging, difficult, unpleasant, or even if there's some intense bliss, to tune into the body and see what it reveals to us. And what it revealed to Jacques Lucéron was his own awakened mind, and it transformed him. And from then on, still incarcerated for the next 11 months, he lived in joy, a quiet joy, radiating it to the point where people crowded around him. They wanted to experience it themselves, that mind state. They woke him up and led him to people who were freaking out, because his mind of great peace, compassion, and awareness could be felt and could help them become free of their own suffering, at least temporarily. The freedom that we can experience through deep enough awakening is beyond comprehension, but it is transformative. And at some level, every single one of us understands that and feels the value of opening to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be willing to sit here for 7 days with our knees aching, our backs aching, possibly bored. But it's worth it. I thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.